Tansei, I'm TR Wheatley, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is Chief Warrant Officer Joel Pedersen of the 38th Canadian Brigade Group, 3rd Division within the Canadian Army. In October 2024, he became the first First Nations person to hold the role of Brigade Sergeant Major. The Fond du Lac, Saskatchewan band member first joined the Canadian Army Reserves at 17, also playing an active role within the Bold Eagle program, serving as a mentor to Indigenous youth. And he spent time as a police officer with the Saskatoon Police at the height of racial tensions, joining not long after the Starlight Tour stories came to light. Kinanaskamitin CWO Pedersen for coming to the APTN studio to speak with us. Congrats on being the first First Nations person to hold the high rank that you do. APTN attended that ceremony more than a year ago. How have you adjusted, and what's it like taking on so much responsibility?
Dlantite, Tansei, Joel Pedersen, Nisigasun, Saskatoon Oche. Thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a real privilege. This past year has gone by really quickly. Being the Brigade Sergeant Major has been was just a highlight of my career, and working with so many phenomenal men and women of the brigade here, based out of Winnipeg, but looking after Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Thunder Bay, and Kenora. You know, we attend a number of events throughout the province of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and we continue to support you know, our higher level of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you enrolled when you were 17 years old. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do so.
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that quite often, and I'm always happy to share that. You know, my mom was a big inspiration for me to apply to the military. And at that age, I was looking kind of into the future, and I wanted to get into policing. And it was kind of the RCMP is where I wanted to go. And initially, my mom had suggested to look at the Army Reserves, and it was something that she had been involved in, and also my dad had been involved in when they were both going to school.
Mm-hmm. And you know, on that note, you did join the Army Reserves. Can you explain for some, including myself, the difference in what that looks like?
In Western Canada, there's a number of different cities and communities that have Army Reserve units, and it's a part-time career that can move into a full-time career, or you can also be part of domestic and international deployments. So
it's a part-time career, but you've been kind of doing it all along. Just talk about, you know, some of those opportunities that you've had within it.
I've been really, really privileged to have the opportunities that have come for me. Leadership training, deployments around the world, and domestically too, seeing a lot of Canada. I've had some incredible leaders and mentors throughout my time in the military, and it really has been a really big part of the journey of my life.
You must have helped during some of the natural disasters within some of the First Nations communities then within that role?
We have. That's a big part of what the Army does for the whole of government, and when required by provinces, we will get the government will ask the military to be involved.
You know, you were just touching on it a little bit about this past year and how it's been a big year for the military. You know, there was apologies and a change in what can be worn while in uniform. I guess you want to share a little bit about what that is and what that means to you?
Well, it's been a number of years, dress policy changes, and it's been on the shoulders of many men and women in the armed forces, some who are not in the military anymore and some who are. One of the changes was the beaded poppy. The Army commander in Ottawa made it official and was the first one to wear the beaded poppy for the Canadian Armed Forces. And it was a really, really significant gesture and a piece that allows Indigenous and non-Indigenous members of the Canadian Armed Forces to wear beaded poppies. So I really think that's a big part of, you know, that reconciliation of action that we've all been looking for.
And I know you don't want to speak on behalf of the CAF and that, but whatnot, but that apology this year was a big step, you know, admitting to discrimination and racism. I guess just from your point of view as an active person still in the military, just, you know, what that meant for you.
Yeah, there's certain things I can definitely talk about and things that I can't. The apology was, I think, for everybody that watched it live or were actually in Ottawa to see it, could see the significant amount of the importance of it, and to hear the stories of all the different people who spoke, I think transcended generations. And especially for those of us still in the military, recognize that it's about culture and it's changes that are taking place.
And you also take on a mentorship role and have worked with the Bold Eagle program. I guess, can you share with our viewers why you felt the need to give back to the Indigenous community that way?
Well, the Bold Eagle program is just an amazing program that started off in Saskatchewan. It started off in Prince Albert with the Prince Albert Grand Council and the Canadian Armed Forces at the time. And the intent of it was really to provide young men and women the opportunity for leadership and development. And it's gone on for now over 30 years. And we've got now generations of young soldiers, men and women who have been able to go through that program. And not all of them stay in the military, but we see them advancing in careers. We see them getting degrees, becoming professionals, lawyers, doctors, police officers, educators, leaders in their own communities. So the program, is such a wonderful program, and to the point now that it is across Canada with the Canadian Armed Forces, and it's in different regions across Canada, but the actual Bold Eagle program out of Wainwright is still going forward, and I know that they're looking forward to this next iteration coming up next year.
And you just spoke about the different things that they've gone on to do, lawyers, doctors, all those sorts of things. I mean, it must feel good, for you to be a part of that story and part of their journey that way.
Well, it is, and I don't think I had a lot to do with it. I think the fact of the matter is opportunities like this that the military can provide for young men and women for all sectors of Canada are there, but having this in particular for our Indigenous people, I think, is really important, because it gives an opportunity for young people not only to learn about culture, but also to get to meet each other.
We briefly spoke about how the military opened up many doors for yourself, whether it was through travel, through business, or becoming a mentor. Just share with us a bit of those experiences that you've had.
Yeah, that's a great question. I use kind of an analogy about doors. Some doors open, some are locked, and you gotta knock on that door to open it. Some are like a sliding door, and it's up to you to walk through that door. I had a lot of opportunities in all three of those examples, and I think that the mentorship piece for me as a young person joining the military, it was about family. And when we think about, especially for Indigenous people, that familial portion of who we are as a people is really important. And I almost felt like over the years that I've seen that family piece of the military is so important, because when we train our soldiers and our young officers to lead and to do jobs that Canada asks them to do, it's something that is really unique, because they have a connection that they connect through the military with. And I feel like the military gave back a lot of that and provided those kind of teachings for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And I guess through all your work, you've also met a lot of other inspirational Indigenous folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really blessed to have leaders not only in the military, but in policing and outside in the business sector. But within the military, I had some phenomenal leaders, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And I think for myself, for the journey that I went through, having those mentors there and being able to connect back with them when I needed it, it was really beneficial. And that's throughout my, the time being in the military.
Interesting journey that you've had, but we need to take a quick break here. But when we come back, we'll switch topics. Stick around. There's much more with Joel Pedersen coming up on Face to Face. Be right back. Cheskwa. Come on in, beat the gua. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Joel Pedersen, an active member of the military, which we talked about before the break. But Joel, let's switch gears here a little bit. You were also a police officer with the Saskatoon Police, and you did start at a very critical time back in the 1990s. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it was a real privilege to be able to serve with the Saskatoon Police Service. I had the opportunity to serve for 25 years and retire as a sergeant, and you know, it was a really interesting time. And again, when I think about the journey of my own, I guess, life, it was a big part of it. It was a big chunk of my adult life in Saskatoon. Having the opportunity to get on it at a young age was I think a bit of a blessing in disguise. When I was 18, I wrote with the RCMP, and I passed the exam, and I was in the process. But I had an inspector really early on just kind of say, you know what, Joel, maybe you need a little bit more time. Stay in the Army Reserves, and maybe do a little bit of post-secondary. And I think it was a polite way of him saying that you're just not quite ready yet. So when I did get on with the police service, it was the right time and right place to do so. It was an interesting time. Joining in 1992 is when I went through police college, and at the time there were two other Indigenous police officers in Saskatoon, at least visibly Indigenous police officers at the time. Two Métis gentlemen, and one later on was able to get his status again. And so there was the three of us to start off with, and for me they had done I think a lot of maybe the hard work. That made it easier for me to do my job and to be able to be successful. And it was a time before Instagram or anything like that, or you know. But you got out and you talked to the kids, you talked to community, you became part of that community. And for me, it was a real privilege to be able to see young Indigenous boys and girls and men and women identify with me, and I didn't really recognize the importance of what that was at the time.
Yeah, because you were still pretty young then, but I mean, looking back, we see all the things now, like, you know, the Starlight Tours at the time, the story of Neil Stonechild, like that must have had some impact on you going in, and like, how am I gonna do this? I
mean, the Neil Stonechild story is, I mean, I think it's a very well-known one, and it's such an unfortunate ending to that young man's life. For myself, just getting onto the police service as that was just kind of happening or had just finished, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about what had happened, nor did I really know about the tours that were described. And you know, I can honestly say that at no time in my career did I participate or see that happen. But not trying to put a blind eye on it. It did happen, and it did continue to happen, but it wasn't uniquely just to Saskatoon. And I know there was a lot of other police agencies that were doing similar kind of practices, because it was not policy. It wasn't right. They knew that. But with that being said, I know that there was a lot of changes that took place, and I know the Saskatoon Police Service, even before the Neil Stonechild inquiry took place, had already made a lot of recommendations and changes into how we were doing business. And even at that time, it was the real advent of technology, and the police service at that time was really at the cutting edges. We already had computers in our vehicles, and this was a time when, like, there wasn't laptops or anything like that. They were actually mobile data terminals is what they were called, but the police service was using that and already starting to use GPS.
And I guess, is there any takeaways or lessons that you carried from your police work into any of the other roles that you do today?
You know, leadership and community engagement is a really big part of it. Being able to interact with people and really trying to not so much sympathize but empathize for situations that they're going through. I mean, I know there were times going to calls where you really need to put yourself in that other person's spot, because not everybody's having a great day, and usually when the police or the cops are called, people are not having a good day. So with that being said, I think that having that interpersonal skill and the ability to have communication always at the forefront in order to de-escalate situations is a big piece that I've taken away from that.
Well, not only dealing with the policing itself, but also balancing as an Indigenous person and trying to walk in both worlds, as you wanna, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll comment on a little bit of that from my experience. I mean, like I kind of alluded to, at the time when I first started, there was only 2 other visible Indigenous people there. As my career started to move, there was more and more Indigenous people joining the ranks, and we now see a significant amount, at least in the Saskatoon Police Service, of Indigenous members there. And I think it's also interesting, you know, as we move into where we are now, we see a lot more people self-identifying as being Indigenous. I mean, at the time, there was guys and gals who probably wouldn't have otherwise said they were. And I think for my journey as well, I mean, the police service really was a pivotal part of my indigeneity. I mean, the first time I went to a sweat lodge was at the RCMP depot, which for a lot of people are probably like, what? How did that happen? And so finding my connection to part of my culture was through my police work. And I mean, I'm forever grateful for that, because I was able to meet men and women in the community of Saskatoon, of the Saskatoon Tribal Council, of Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, who openly accepted me, and you know, it really did make a lot of influence.
And that kind of leads into my next question here, Joel. You mentioned that you're a 60s Scoop survivor. That must have been something that took you a lifelong, like, I guess, processing. But not only that, it's shaped your life in a way.
Yeah, it's. I often am not sure how to talk about this. You know, like I don't have a horrible story to share. I don't think. But again, it all depends on how you look at it. I was born in Saskatoon. My biological mother was from the far north in Saskatchewan, from the Fond du Lac, Uranium City area. And my biological father was also from that far north area. And I don't really know the complete story of why I was into the foster system in Saskatchewan, but I was in that. And just really grateful that my mom and my dad were able to adopt me through the AIM program. You know, it actually, in my opinion, it worked for my benefit. Because I was given opportunities that I probably wouldn't have gotten if I was in Fond du Lac or Stony Rapids or Uranium City or Edmonton. I don't know for sure. Well, I'll never know. There's a lot of people that had a lot of suffering through that. I don't know if I can call myself a survivor from that. You know, I don't feel all that comfortable saying that, but you know, I definitely am. I'm part of that AIM program. You know, my adopted parents, who I call my mom and dad, never pretended that I was not Indigenous. They were quite proud of that. My mother has a degree in history, and she's, you know, was very, very forthcoming with that. My generation, it wasn't taught in school. And we talk about the 7 generations and where we're at now. You know, our young people, where they're at now, they're getting this in school, and they're learning about what it was. They're learning about what the AIM program was. They're learning about what happened to our relations in the past, our great-grandparents. And as we move forward, I think it's important to show that there's also positive and there's success that comes out of these things. They weren't all horrible, but I think there was a lot of people that did suffer. There's no doubt in my mind.
And I know you're taking the humble route here and saying you didn't have, you know, those bad experiences, but you've definitely got the resilience. So I just want to thank you for the conversation so far, Joel. Time now for one last break. More to come on Face to Face with Joel Pedersen. Cheskwa. Tawa, welcome back to Face to Face. It's been a great conversation with CWO Pedersen this week. I guess, you know, both your police and military work had training in common. Can you speak to the importance of that physical activity and how that's been a big part of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think about even as a youth, as a young person, soccer was a big part of my growing up. My dad had a good friend of his from the university, and he was from the Caribbean, and brought me out to a soccer practice. And I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and he was coaching older kids, like 8 years old. And I was out doing the drills and stuff like that. And Delano James said to my dad, he says, "You got to put this kid in soccer. He's got to play some sports." And I'll tell you, that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because I think from a young age, I realized how much I enjoyed training and playing sport and that team building. And when I look at the portions of, you know, my military training and the police training, even from like a simple you know, classroom work to the actual physical, tactile skill set, it's about those kind of repetitions and doing the training correctly and in a safe manner.
And I guess you kind of try to incorporate that in everything you do and try to get youth involved and into that physical sport. When
I was getting close to retiring from the police service, I was figuring out what was I going to do. I wasn't really sure, and there's three real big things that I have a big part of me, and those were the tenets of a business that I kind of put together. And it was leadership, it was community, it was physical activity, and those three pillars really drove what I wanted to do for community. And so when I created my business called Fitness 2J2, it was about removing barriers and creating opportunities for Indigenous people, youth and adults. And so being socially responsible, community-based, just kind of, it carried on from what I had learned as a police officer and working with community and building opportunities for all those people that probably wouldn't have an opportunity to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I just have to mention here the fact that you wear a long braid. You know, I was covering the Indigenous Veterans Day powwow recently, and I noticed some of the young men who are also growing out their own hair. You know, they're admiring and seeing that representation that you bring to the uniform. Do you notice moments like this, and how does that make you feel?
I'm proud of my braid. Definitely, it connects me to my culture. I think it's not only a symbol, but it's symbiotic. And what I mean by that is it's a connection. And we have, you know, those three kind of weaves that come into our essence, and we're able to connect. You know, I definitely take a personal interest and personal pride in. And if it allows a safe space for men and women to grow their braid where they feel confident and comfortable that they can do so, then that's really important. It also shares with the rest of, you know, society, so to speak, that at this time in policing and in the military, that men are allowed to grow braid, and it's accepted.
Mm-hmm. I just want to thank you today, Gananaskamatin Joel, for sharing your journey with us. You know, but that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Face to Face. Remember that you can always catch up with us on any episodes that you may have missed. Just visit our website, aptnnews.ca, or open your YouTube app and add APTN News to your rotation. All of our face-to-face episodes are also available as podcasts, including this one. You can find those wherever you choose to download audio from. I'm T.R. Waitley, filling in for Dennis Ward. Tapwagiche for sticking with us today and always. 7 more sleeps until the next face-to-face. Agase.